What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to do with you guys. This is the CRKT or Columbia River Knife and Tool Ripsnort, a Philip Booth design. I am not familiar with Mr. Booth, but yeah, this is one of his designs. So this knife was sent to me by the Apex Pass-Around Group, and so by extension, the manufacturer. As usual, I do my best to not that it'll affect my review. Also, full disclosure, my name was drawn amidst a bunch of other reviewers. And I won this knife. Sometimes that's what happens. When a manufacturer sends us a knife. This is a pretty inexpensive knife as well. And so I ended up actually giving it away as a prize on my last live stream. Now this video is pre-recorded, so you're seeing it whenever you're seeing it, but this was recorded a day after I gave it away. Just needed to get it recorded. So yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know, what the deal was with this knife. But none of that's going to affect my ability to give a fair and honest review. If you decide you want to pick this knife up, whether it's now or at the end of the review, there is going to be Amazon affiliate links down in the description where you can easily do that. Also down in the description is a link to my Patreon. So if you'd like to get your hands on one of these cool stickers and help support my channel at the same time, you can do that. Also, what's available at every tier, even the $1 tier, is my Patreon exclusive content, which is once a week. So if you want to check all that stuff out and support me, that would absolutely mean the world to me. Thank you. Anyways, let's go ahead and get a measurement on this guy. So overall length of the Ripsnort is coming in at kind of a surprising 7 3/4 inches overall. It feels like a bigger knife than it is, and that's probably because it's so thick. We'll talk about that. From tip to scale, you're looking at, oh boy, I mean, you could call it 3.5 inches back here. It's 3 1/4 inches if you go by that tip right there. Blade length is pretty much uncontroversially 3 inches. So yeah, it feels like a bigger knife than it is, but it's a medium-sized knife. How about some size comparisons? Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. Fairly similar in length to the Ritter Hogue. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? Para 3 coming in at 7 1/4 inches overall. So how's the action on this guy? The action's pretty good. It's running on nylon washers. I don't know if we can see in the, yeah, you can see that. Running on nylon washers, which is something that you see from CRKT. Nylon washers are demonized in the knife community. I don't care at this price, right? This is roughly a $35 knife. I just don't care at this price. It is smooth. They are fairly reliable. Yes, they can tear. It's pretty rare that a nylon washer will tear. Hinderer knives ran on nylon for years, and I can remember very few times as part of the forums and the collectors group that somebody actually reported a nylon washer being torn under hard use. Yes, people do hard use their Hinderer knives. So anyways, my point is, don't be afraid of nylon washers. It's actually fairly shake shut, and the detent is good. The flipping action is reliable. It's just a little bit clunky because of the thickness. Let's go ahead and talk about that. So as far as carry profile goes, this is a sort of, well, it's a cleaver style blade, right? So whether you want to call that sheep's foot, Wharncliffe, whatever, sheep's cliff, well, it doesn't really matter. It's creating a carry profile that's a little bit tall, and it's also a thick knife. This is thick. Carry profile up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, which both have kind of awkward carry profiles in terms of height. Not quite as tall, but let me emphasize the thickness on this knife. My goodness, is this a chunk? Yeah. God. It's so chunky. It's just a fat knife, I don't understand that, but it also kind of adds a little bit of novelty enjoyment. I gotta be honest, it's kind of like I see it and I'm like, look how fat that thing is. It's kind of interesting, that's going to drive a lot of people crazy, but that's just the way that it is. Now, handle material. I thought that this was like smoothed out G10 at first. It actually is polymer, and then you have a lot of steel. Like, look how thick the liners are, seriously. And then the blade itself is probably, I'm going to guess it's 135 thousandths, which isn't super thick, but it's also not super thin. Let's find out. Maybe 140 thousandths. So it's getting up there to the thicker side on the blade. Not crazy. Consequentially, though, weight is coming in at 5.75 ounces. That's not bad for me. You guys know, like, I actually prefer a bit of heft So between 4 and 6.5 ounces, I'm happy. More about carry profile. Unfortunately, I don't say this often, this knife, in terms of carry profile and weight and blade length, is kind of a little, it's going to be noticeable. Like 5.75 ounces is 5.75 ounces. The weight is the weight, right? So that's as far as you're going to go there in terms of your sense and your ability to notice it. Anything extra is going to be in the profile of it, right? Profile is a little wonky on this, and it's also thick. So you're going to be aware of this in your pocket. If you're used to carrying a knife like that, if you carry Medfords and you're just looking for a thick budget knife, then you're probably not going to notice it as much. But if you're wearing athletic shorts or tight fitted pants, yeah, you're not going to like this. You're not going to like this at all. So just wanted to point that out there. So what are we looking at for materials here? Well, like I said, we're looking at polymer and stainless steel. That's fine. The polymer, wouldn't be my first choice. I would prefer G10, but it's okay. So the blade steel on this one, it says D2. But I'm finding like if you go and look on Blade HQ, it lists it as HCR13 MOV. So maybe they're transitioning. I don't know. If you use my link, I don't know if you're going to end up with D2 or not. I just looked at the time of this video, and it seems as though the ones that are listed, the ones on my link, are D2. But if you're watching this a year in the future, 6 months in the future, it may have changed. So just know it's not a guarantee if you're getting HCR13 MOV or D2. I don't think it really matters at $35. I prefer D2 over HCR13 MOV, but there are a lot of people who prefer the HCR over D2. HCR is stainless, and it does take a really good edge. It's just not going to hold it as good as D2, and it's also not quite as tough. So if you favor stainlessness and you favor the ability to get a super fine edge, you're probably going to be better off with HCR. If you favor overall edge retention and toughness, and you don't care about the stainless qualities as much, then you might like D2 a little bit more. I'm not a metallurgist, so my explanation of that may not have been entirely accurate, but that's the way that I see it. This is my favorite thing about this knife, the blade. I love cleaver style blades, and this one is very simple, and it's done in a way that is aesthetically pleasing to me. Speaking of aesthetically pleasing, why don't we wipe my nasty fingerprints off of this knife? God, I have such a bad problem with that. But yeah, it's got a nice satin finish on it. It says CRKT on the blade. I don't mind that too much. I'd kind of like to minimize this kind of stuff where they have like this model number, I don't know, 727002. I have no idea what that number means, and I don't care. I just don't want it on there. Ripsnort and trademark, that kind of sucks. I don't mind booth design in D2, but I know what it is. I bought it. I don't need that on there. CRKT seems to do that with their knives, and they'll probably continue to do it. So whatever. The flat on this knife actually only extends to right here, though I would imagine the full thickness is actually carried out as far as this line goes. The nose on the blade appears to be the same thickness at about 145 thousandths at its thickest point. The reason I'm pointing that out is blade shapes like this tend to be strong. So again, if you're somebody who's like, I favor toughness over, stainless properties, so maybe I should go with D2. In a blade shape like this, I mean, toughness and edge stability, that has to do with the edge, the cutting edge. But in terms of how strong this knife will be in this area down here, yeah, a lot stronger than knives that actually have a tip, for sure. So if you're really going to be pounding on your knives, this is a good blade shape. Given the heft of it, you probably could do a little bit of light chopping. I'm not sure that that's going to be covered under their warranty if something happens, but yeah, you could if you wanted to. It does come down to a pretty darn sharp cutting edge. I mean, this actually is going to be a fairly performance-oriented blade, and there's nothing in the cutting path. So yeah, I kind of like that. All edges are pretty nicely knocked down. There's going to be, am I getting any fingernail right there? No, really not. So yeah, everything's been nicely knocked down. So moving on to the scales, everything is a little bit sharp. On the inside of the liners, this area right here, it's just a little sharp. It's also a pretty it's like a 90 angle degree right off the side. So while the scales are fairly contoured, they are also kind of blocky. I'm not going to say they're sharp. I'm going to say they're blocky. So if you're going to use this knife and you're really going to be squeezing it under a lot of pressure, that's really going to wear in your hands after a little bit. Not the worst thing in the world. Definitely not the worst I've ever seen, but something I wanted to point out. You have a decently nice, show side pivot, and then on the other side, you have the adjustment side. Over here, These are T6. I mean, I'll go ahead and get out my bit selector and driver to show you guys. By the way, both of these are super inexpensive, very recommendable, and down in the description. So check that out, as well as my links to some of the higher end American production knives that I like and some of the budget knives that I like. Everything is nicely categorized out down there so you guys can find what you want and scratch the itch that you probably have because you're watching my channel. Yeah, those are T6, and under the pivot, I'm not going to get to it, but taking a look at it, I'm 99% sure that's going to be T8. You guys know how I feel about T6. I don't like it. It's never a deal breaker. I would prefer that everything was at least T8. But if you're going to go higher than T8, just keep everything the same size so it's easy and you don't have to switch your bits out. It's kind of nice how they transition from the scale to this stainless steel little, it's like an insert. It's done fairly well. You know, I mean, there's not any gaps or anything that are crazy or outside of what I would expect on a budget knife. There are a couple of little marks on this. I'm not sure what that's from. This has gone to a couple other reviewers, so that might just be the case, that it's just from wear and tear from other people handling it. One thing I noticed is that this polymer, because it's so, you know, shiny and polished, I guess, or maybe that's just the final product of it, it does pick up fingerprints readily, so just be aware of that. I do not like this area down here at the butt, and I'll tell you why. It's unsightly and sort of abrupt, and it just doesn't go with the knife. The other problem is that because of the way that they did that, they decided that there's only going to be one carry position for this knife, and that was going to be tip down, right-handed only. This is a flipper. In my opinion, flippers should not be tipped down. Why? Because when they're in your pocket like this, the flipper tab is up against the back seam. So if anything was going to accidentally deploy your knife in your pocket, it would have to be if a flipper was being carried tip down, because something runs into the back seam of your pocket and bam, it flips it out a little bit, at least enough for it to be like this. Now, you know, a lot of people are going to be quick to point out that's not a problem. It doesn't have much of a tip, right? Well, if it deploys a little bit in your pocket like this, and I reach into my pocket to grab this knife or something else that might be in my pocket, I run the risk of running my finger on that blade, and I don't like that. So the reason that they put this up here is because they decided to just not have the scale extend down here, and they decided to make room for the lanyard hole and make that the most important thing. Lanyard holes, some people really care about those, but I feel like it's kind of a dying thing in the EDC community, whether you're a user, a collector, whatever. You could have easily made room for the lanyard. You know, I've shown many examples of ways that they can do lanyard holes, you know, making them a part of the backspacer or just moving them off to the side and making it like an oval back here. But if CRKT had brought the scales down, or Mr. Booth or whoever, I'm not saying I'm a knife maker and I know better. I'm just saying this is how I would have preferred it. Bring the scale all the way down, move that lanyard hole over here, and then put the pocket clip right here so that you can carry it tip up. And then also mill it on the other side so that it's favoring both right and left-handed people. That would have been my way to do that, but this is the way they chose to do it. Again, super thick, although I will say this is kind of a pleasing area back here. You know, we've got the black to steel to black to steel to black. I imagine the backspacer is also made out of polymer. This is nice, and it's very, very seamless. It's very well done. It's very nicely fitted in there, especially for the money, so no issues. This side is much the same as the other side, except you have the pocket clip area. I will go ahead and say that they did mill into the scales so the pocket clip rests inside the scale. That's nice. No room for play. Pocket clip is all right in terms of, you know, even I don't like where it's positioned, but in terms of how it carries and how it's designed, I don't have a problem with that. I just wish it was down here. So no big deal. Lockup sitting at a very solid, something like it's only about like 40%. Extremely solid. Lots of surface contact considering the thickness of the blade and thickness of the scales. Centering is off a little bit, but that could be because of the other people who have handled this. I also find that to be the case with inexpensive knives that are running on nylon, because nylon is flexible and mushy. Sometimes it just doesn't hold the blade perfectly in place. When this knife is locked out, it's completely solid. Completely solid. There's no blade play in any direction. But when it's down here, you can kind of move it around a little bit, and that's because of nylon. Is that a problem? No, but I'm going to point it out because I know some people are going to look at that and go, I don't like that because of how the budget knife world has evolved. People are used to bearings now and at least phosphor bronze, and those hold the blades in place better So that's, people are going to judge it on that, even though it's technically not an issue in terms of function. So again, things I'm going to nitpick: T6 screws. The overall design is very thick, very chunky. It's very heavy. I don't really like polymer. It's not really that big of a deal. I don't really like nylon washers. It's not really that big of a deal. The biggest letdown with this knife is definitely the position of the pocket clip in this unsightly area back here. I don't really like that. But I do really like the blade shape. And I'll be honest, there is a part of me that just enjoys the novelty of this knife just being just a fat, chunky cleaver, Could you go out and use this? Yeah, absolutely. I have no idea which blade steel you're going to get. Both are going to be just fine, but yeah, this knife is definitely going to serve. It's still going to be a fairly safe and reliable tool. Definitely going to be reliable, and it's, for the most part, going to be safe. Just be cognizant of that carry position. So what's the price in this guy? It's between $35 and $40. Do I think that's worth it? I mean, I don't know. If you're going after this exactly, it's really hard to argue with the budget knife world, because it's really not all that expensive. There are definitely better knives out there for $35 to $40. Definitely. Is it CRJB or CJRB? I always forget. But man, they have some awesome knives for barely any money. I think most of their line is better, especially if you're looking for a cleaver style blade. I can recommend some CJRBs. Take a look at the Crag. I think that's great. But if you really like the thickness or, of this knife, you kind of like the idea of that, and maybe you just enjoy Columbia River Knife and Tool as a brand, then yeah, you're gonna be happy with this. Those other little things are probably going to bother you a little bit, but all in all, I think you'll be fairly happy with it. This isn't going to be. This is different for me. It's like I do that thing where I tell you, these are the types of people who might enjoy this. These are the types of people who wouldn't. But I think there are so many better choices out there for this price range. I'm going to put this on cheap knives I like, but I'm not going to put it on my most recommended knives playlist. Does that make sense? I like it. It's not going to be the most recommendable thing in the world. I just want to be fair and honest with everybody. But I think that's going to be pretty much it today, guys. I think that's pretty much all I can say. Like I said, if you want to pick this up for yourself, I do have an Amazon affiliate link right down there in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.